All right, well, welcome again, everyone, to another premium session. Go, Hunter. Good to see you, brother. Hope you're doing well over there in the States. All right, what's been happening? So, SPX running fairly flat, but I think it opened up a bit higher than that, to be honest. Yeah, so it opened up a little bit higher than that. Had a run up. Now it's just sort of pushing sideways. It's the start of the month, so still finding its way. Going to expect some wicks to the downside, and the upside. Just finding out where the candle's going to go for the month. But we might just jump straight into Bitcoin, I think. All right. So we had a decent push on Sunday, which is yesterday, and I just want to go over why 63K was an important level. So we've got the candle from two weeks ago here, full body candle, quite bearish, which is why we led into this big sell off. But it's regained most of that. I actually think that last week's weekly candle it's around 0.8% to the downside, which is a great recovery given that got all the way down to 58 and a half K. But if we zoom right in, so we can see the bottom of the wick is around 63 150. The closer that we're going to get to that wick, the better it was going to be for this coming week and moving into July. It means that more buyers have stepped in. It's on higher volume than those previous two candles, so that's also a good sign that we have got volume coming in, creating this wick. Means that there's a lot more demand for Bitcoin down at these prices. Also, looking at the weekly, the closes, whilst we did get down to 58.5K, and it's within $2,000 of this low, we still closed higher on the weekly chart than what we did back here. It's not to say that we can't come back down and close below this week or in the following week, but it is a really good sign that there's strong support in this region below that 61.5K. So whilst I was hopeful that it was going to get a bit higher, closing at that 62,700 is not a bad thing. Now, if we go into monthly charts, we can see that we've always got a wick to the downside, and this goes back as far as 2010. That's how far back you have to go to find a monthly candle that doesn't have a wick to the downside. I mean, we've already got one now. I probably suspect that it's going to come back down a bit lower before it goes up. We do have candles where they are extremely small amounts. Like if we go over here, I think this one's like $100 or $200 wick to the downside, and then we've also got another one back over here. This one here is like a $50 wick to the downside, which is really not much. But this monthly candle here, that was the breakout from the lows, and basically the start of the bull market. And then where was the other one? Over here, that's in wave 3, moving up. We're not really in the same situation, although we are looking for the start of wave 5. Um, it, that could be it, but I just think there's a large CME gap over here, which we'll jump into. I can show that to you. The monthly actually looks fairly prominent, even the weekly. So we've got this gap here down 6,300 to the open, which is 62k. I think it's going to come and try at least fill most of it, if not all of it. And even on the CME chart, we don't have any wick on the bottom side of the candle either. So that's what sort of tells me that we're going to have a bit more downside to come, but hopefully it's just a matter of filling this this gap up before it starts taking off again. One thing that can give us a bit of an idea that we are going to be in a bit more of an uptrend over the shorter period is if we get a third green candle today, which we have seen happen previously. If we go back over here, we actually got 4 greens, and then it had a pullback before it took off, and that was at the range lows. And that happens. It does happen a few times. I don't think it's as strong of a signal as Okay, look, we've got another one over here. When it broke down to that 24k, we got 1, 2, 3. Had a retrace, and then it got ready to take off again up there. It's not as prominent as the 3 reds, but it still definitely has its merit. So that's where I'm sort of thinking today closes green. Tomorrow may close green as well, but then we will get some sort of pullback, close that gap, and then we'll take off again. What we don't want to see is that 58.5k get broken. Probably really don't even want to see it get retested, to be honest. We just want to see a bounce within that zone. Because if we do start seeing price coming down to test this level, there's not a great deal of structure below here. We've got the 56k level, and then there is levels well below that, around that 52, 53k level. So at least for me, I'm happy with performance of BTC, provided today closes green. If it closes red, then I'm less confident. But given the decent candle for yesterday to close out the week, I'm quietly confident that this one will turn out green. It does only have about $500 to play with, but I would have suspected that the sell-off would have happened during the New York exchange session for us to start coming down to be red. I might just move on and jump into NIA. I'll just see if there's any comments or questions first. So what I want to look at is NIA. So it had a great run out of the lows into the start of last week. We saw it had a nice thrust off, a nice bounce. Failed to get a close above this horizontal level I've got at $5.50. This is on a daily time frame, obviously. We had that horizontal acting as resistance, and then when we were peaking through there, this other horizontal resistance line that I've got here was also acting as resistance. Sent it back down, and now we've had a bit more strength come back in. It was looking quite weak coming back here, but this golden pocket, that's the local level from the low at $4.40 up to the high. We actually saw it touch there quite nicely. Saw it bounce, came back again, took off. So that's really good to see how it's reacting off these key level. NIA loves the 618. Even when in the bear market, it was the 618 was acting as a strong rejection zone. So it's good to see that it's now flipped and it's acting as a strong support zone. So at the moment, we are trading above the 618. Let's jump into a lower time frame here. So I was really liking this over here, how it was holding the level quite well over multiple 1 hour closes. There's even a couple 4 hour closes in there as well. So that was telling me that, okay, we're flipping this to support. We then did have a bit of a sell off on Bitcoin just before. I think it was around LSE, lunchtime LSE, and just before New York was opening up, a couple of hours before New York were opening up. So we did see a sell off on Bitcoin, which then obviously dropped near down, and so it's then got to contest with this level again, which is why it sort of has struggled a little bit to come back up with Bitcoin. So what we want to see here is just Bitcoin maintain its level, near come back up and hold this again as support. If we can see a bit of sideways and maybe a little bit up from Bitcoin, then my next protocol is tackling this top here. I think if we can break this top, I'm not too concerned about these horizontals. This top here is now the new key level for me, immediate key level. If we can break this top, then I'm starting to look up at that $6 to $6.10 mark. It's not just calling shots, or because we can draw a fib. I've done that right, yeah. So that's the golden pocket extension. It's probably about $6.10 to probably about $6.20 would be the 1.65, and that would be the fib extension of this move. You go up, you retrace down to the 618, and then you pop back up again. That's my theory on it, at least anyway. But it is quite reliant and critical on Bitcoin playing ball. So New really needs to do. It really does need to get a bit of a move on, because I am anticipating a pullback in Bitcoin in the next couple of days. So this may not play out, but we'll see what happens there. Let's see if there's any comments. Oh. All right. Just want to move on to sweat. I think it's been a little while since I've touched on it in one of our videos. So I did put up a bit of a post about sweat. Look, it's no lie that it is definitely underperforming. It's not far off its all-time low. From where it is now, it is a 50% about a 33% retrace. But in the grand scheme of things, where it's come from, it's relatively close. And this is part of the problem of falling away from these high levels and not maintaining or holding a bit of strength, is that the lower you get, you now end up with a lot more resistant levels above. And so where we are, we really don't want to be falling any lower. We're hanging on to the last fib level of the 886, which it has tapped a couple times, and the bounces are getting weaker. So hopefully this is just going to be a bit of accumulation period before it can take off. I do want to see it popping up above this 0.0063 level. That was a massive key level back in the middle of the bear market, back in July and August last year. Struggled to get above it. I think it took about at least 3 attempts for it to poke through, and then it had flipped it to support, and it was a very critical level for the continuation of the uptrend. So we don't want to see that start acting as resistance, which at the moment we can see it is. So ideally, maybe we'll get a bounce back above, and we can come back below, and it sort of starts flipping this whole zone into a big support region before it can take off again. But there is a lot of headwind up above. But there's a lot of alts that are in a similar situation. I've got, I'm unfortunately bagging quite a few of them, or maybe not quite a few. I do have a number of laggers, that's for sure. They're 98% of the entire crypto market are laggers. If they're all winners and the front runners, then it just that's a bit of a fantasy land, I think. So anyway, we'll see what happens with Sweat. I'm really looking forward to September when the TGE unlocks cease, and also when this vote burn ceases as well, and we can get some actual burning of real tokens. I did see some mention that there may be another sort of vote burn coming up. So I'm interested to learn a bit more about that. I hope it doesn't get treated the same as what the last one has. Was there any tokens that you guys wanted me to look at specifically? I might just have a quick look at Kaz. Kaz has been going pretty awesome. So I got into Kaz fairly late. I'm not going to lie about it. Pretty sure I bought in this dip here back in April. So I didn't mark the exact bottom, but yeah, I think it was definitely in around this drop over here. My average is off the top of my head around 10 point, maybe it could be 11 cents, 10.8 cents, something like that. But we have seen it come up, broke to new highs, came up and hit 20 cents on the bottom basically. So Kaz is holding up really well, moving really strong. It does get a bit violent, like we saw when it first broke up to its all-time high. It had a decent retrace of a considerable amount, like it dropped, 30% pretty much, maybe a little bit more even. But it's quickly recovered that to make a new all-time high within 2 weeks. It's back making new all-time highs again. So Kaz is looking really promising. I'm excited to see where this one goes. They have had I suppose a halving event recently. So that's definitely probably contributed to it as well. They have recently also initiated like a KRC20 token where you can start minting tokens on their chain. I think that literally just came live yesterday. So there's a lot of development going on over there. So it is pretty exciting. And even we might have a look at Kaz BTC chart. So it is on a zoomed out look. We are putting in lower highs as we can see. Boom, boom, boom. But it is showing a bit of promise. And sorry, this is inverted. Let me fix it up. That looks better. So I think getting back above this 50% level here, it's amazing actually. Before I talk about that, it's amazing to see that Kaz is making all-time highs and showing a lot of strength, but yet it's still in the weak half of this chart against Bitcoin. So I'm quite excited to see what happens when or if Kaz gets above this 50% level into the strong half of the chart and starts taking off and breaking this high, and how quickly it gets moving. And if it can break this high, then it's in uncharted territory. and that's when we really start see some of these tokens get a boogie on once they start getting into uncharted territory. The reason for that is because there's no prior structure for support and resistance lines. Um, it becomes extremely speculative. And once you start seeing some big gains come in after a couple of days, then the hype starts to really take off with retail. And newbies, degens, they start all piling in, and it just keeps going and going and going until eventually um, that demand starts to dry up a little bit. So for me, I'm pretty excited to see what's going to happen with Kaz. Probably one of my better bags, that's for sure. Yeah, I'll have a look at Ton and TRX. Start with Ton. So Ton is another strong performer. 2024 has really been a great year for it. So we can see, down here came into the year around that $2 mark. Now we're sitting up almost 4x from that point, and it hasn't really stopped there. So we had Bitcoin peak in March, and it was trading around that $4. Let me get this a bit better. It's trading around that $3.80 to $4 mark, and it's pretty much done a 2x since then. Whilst Bitcoin has sort of, it's been just ranging ever since March. So Tony's looking really strong. It looks like it still wants to keep going up. Um, you can see the general direction when you zoom out. It is up. Like back here, you probably could have thought maybe we're going to have a bit of a retrace. It's come back up, puts in a lower high. Maybe it's over. It's the strength comes back in, makes new all-time highs. So I think Ton is looking really good, really really healthy at the moment. Um, I'm just a bit cautious about the valuation on it, like getting into a coin that has moved so much at this stage of the game. Um, there definitely will be some more upside to come. Um, we it is a bit of a difficult one because you want to be in the strong coins, and Ton is clearly a strong coin, but you have to look at market caps, FDVs. What are the vesting schedules looking like? Can you be dumped? Can they start to dump on you in 3, 4, 5 months time? And maybe it's not going to be as strong in the second half of the year. Um, these are the sort of things you need to weigh up. But then also on the positive side, there is nothing prior. I'll go out to weekly chart. There is nothing prior to say, well, when it gets to $10, that's it. There's a massive um, resistance zone up here because it is in uncharted territory. And this is what I was trying to say about Kaz. Once it breaks out, there's nothing on the left to say, well, no, this is where the supply is going to start entering the market, and they can exceed your expectations and go higher. Um, so yeah, I think the weekly looks even stronger again. It wouldn't be a bad investment, that's for sure. But you just got to be, I suppose, maybe a little bit more realistic about your gains that you might get from it. Is it going to go to maybe $20? So you're looking at a 3x more or less. Something to that effect. I don't even know what that would translate to for a market cap or FDV for it. But yeah, one thing I do like about Ton, I know very little about the chain itself, and I know Hunter, you're fairly involved and have been researching it, but I've noticed that they've got no transaction fees on using their chain when sending fiat or whatever across like sexes and stuff like that, which is really handy. That would definitely attract users to use the chain, and obviously being Telegram, they've got a shitload of users there as well. So yeah, I do think Ton is is good a good token. The only question I have is um, just need to be mindful of this is we're investing, and you have to look at the risk versus reward. We'll have a look at TRX. Not quite, Baldrick. You need to be careful with that. Like, if you look at the all of the tokens that completed a full cycle from the last cycle and their performance at the moment, um, if you put a line through Solana, you're really not seeing any of those old tokens playing well. Um, like Solana really is an exception to the rule. Like, Cardano, XRP, it's been around for a few cycles. EGLD, Moon River. Then you can go into like the gaming coins and Sand. A lot of them are way off where they're way off from their all time highs of last cycle. Um, Solana really is one of the very few that has performed extremely well compared to, or when you're looking at it in line with last cycle, and the other one would have to be BNB. That's really holding up well. The only thing with BNB is you're probably not getting the same return on investment because it didn't drop anywhere near as much in the bear market compared to any other token, including Bitcoin. But with that, it hasn't had to recover as hard either. So yeah, it is definitely a difficult one to watch, or consider at least anyway. Not seeing how something performs now doesn't necessarily mean it's going to perform in the next cycle. But I'll jump into TRX. Mr. Justin Sun. Well, what have I got going on here? Let's get a different chart. BitMEX. No. Oh, this is looking fairly strong as well. This is on a weekly chart. TRX has obviously been around for the last cycle as well, so we'll put this one in the basket of coins that are still doing pretty good. This is the bear market low. So it hasn't really had a big gain, to be honest. Like, it's sitting up about a 3x from its lows, and we'll just see how far it dropped. Oh, so this is another one that this isn't quite similar to BNB. BNB didn't drop as much. Not by there's not a big difference between the two, but it's similar to BNB in that it outperformed Bitcoin in the bear market, and it's only done around about a 3x, give or take, from its lows, and BNB's in a very similar situation. So Tron is looking pretty good, looking healthy. It's not making all-time highs yet, and it has had a bit of a retrace here, bit of a breather, but it has been on a pretty much straight up with a couple little corrections along the way. Now it's had a deeper correction, but it looks like it's getting back above these tops here, which we saw there was a decent sell-off for a couple of weeks. So getting back above there probably suggests it's going to come back up and test these tops at some point. And we can chuck our 50% tool on this. It's above the 50% level as well, so it's in the side of strength. Yeah, I'd be pretty confident in saying it's at some point in the next couple of weeks. It's going to be testing these highs over here. One thing I don't like, I'd definitely be open to doing like a futures trade or a day trade on this. But when I'm looking to do investments for medium, long term periods, I like to understand the project a bit more in a bit more detail. And for me personally, Justin Sun makes a shitload of money. He's done amazing things, I suppose, with his exchanges that he runs and with Tron. I just don't trust him, so you wouldn't see me getting into Tron. I'd probably much prefer to be getting into BNB than I would Tron. Um, but that's just me, and it's probably more of a personal stance as opposed to based on anything that's sort of factual. Um, I just think he's shady, but can't knock his token. The token does look strong. Hasn't had massive gains, but it also didn't have massive losses in the bear market, which is pretty amazing when you look at it. You know, it dropped 74% from its all-time high to the bear market low, and I'm saying it held up pretty well. In traditional finance, you'd be asking, was there an earthquake? Did the building collapse? Like, what happened? It shit the bed. But in crypto, that's actually considered holding up pretty good. Yeah, I think they do a lot of like wash trading as well, and almost like wash transfers on their chain to increase the amount of volume that's running through it. Um, yeah, it is definitely shady, but wash trading, that's not something new. They've been doing it on exchanges and on dexes for a long time to try appeal to the masses and get them in, and look how much volume there is over with us. I might just jump into Link. All right, so I've got this line here. I must have put it in there a couple of months ago, perhaps. And this line here is showing um, price support and resistance. So when we were trading over here, it was resistance. When it popped up to make its cycle highs, it was acting as support before it broke back down. And we did have a break above, but it's a fail break. It was unable to hold it for consecutive weeks before it's come back down, and that's probably largely due to Bitcoin having its sell off and retrace as well. Um, Link's not doing too bad. The thing with Link is it's not it's quite centralized in the sense of its tokenomics, um, and it's not necessarily proven, but certainly last cycle it was very much spoken that every time it has a decent run up, the insiders at Chainlink are selling and suppressing the price. Um, it's a great project. It's intertwined into so much um, within the crypto space and trying to branch out outside of crypto as well. So it is massive. It's the big, so it justifies its price, I think, and more. It can definitely be a lot higher than where it is, but it has really stagnated since it broke out of its channel um, from its bear market. We got that massive pump up. It hasn't made all time highs. It's a fair way off that. All time highs are up over $50 from the last cycle. Um, but we're still only trading in this sort of open air range over here. We're not taking out some of these highs. I think that $30 level is going to prove to be quite difficult. Once it does start popping up above 20, like 20's proven to be difficult enough as it is. So it does have a fair bit of resistance above. I do like Chainlink. I do like what it's about. Um, Zooming out, it does look like a bit of a head and shoulders going on there, but we are in a bull market, so I doubt it's going to be capitulating down to $4, give or take. Looking at that, get down to maybe the $7 mark if it was to play out. Yeah, it does have a bit of resistance above, but at least it's hasn't broken back down into that $9, $10 region. Previous accumulation period, it is still holding its overall range. I'd start getting nervous if we started trading below, say, that $11.50 mark, even $12 really, because this is where we're getting all of our support coming in down here. We don't want to be breaking below that support. As long as it just keeps on doing its thing, it will eventually get its breakout. Again, there's probably limited upside, I think, to Link. I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't get back to its all-time high, around that $55 mark. It definitely can. And then, maybe around that $45, $50 mark, maybe it puts in like a double top this cycle, something to that effect. That's probably what I'd be looking for Link if I was invested in it and got in back during this accumulation period. That's where my targets would be, probably around that $50 mark, something like that. Yeah, I did want to talk about moving averages just quickly. It is something that I do use daily. Only a couple of them I'll use daily, but I did want to show all about some of the other important moving averages that you need to be aware of, and you can use on like when you see a big impulse, an impulse move on Bitcoin. What are the key moving averages that we want to use? Because by default, I think they normally put in there it's like 7, 15 maybe, and 99, or it's like quite random, the moving averages that are put in on the exchanges by default. So I'll just jump into here. So this is just a Binance chart. Um, I've got this set up with my moving averages that I'll glance at once a month or whenever there's a big impulse move. Um, so I've got the 50. This is just a simple moving average. 50, 100, and 200. They're the key ones on the moving averages for my like glance over once a month or in a big impulse move. They're the ones that I will use. So we're on the daily at the moment. And the 200-day is the most important one in the bull market so far that I've seen. It has been holding up. We haven't crossed below the 200-day since we broke out from the accumulation, well, except for back here. So maybe I did lie a little bit. We did pop back down over here. What's going on? But it has acted as some strong support at times as well. So this was the banking crisis where it taps it when we ran down to about 19.5K. You do get golden crosses and your death crosses with your moving averages. They're quite interesting. They bring a lot of fear into the market, but quite often you see a dump into a golden cross or a pump into a death cross before it continues in that direction. So as we can see here, we've got a golden cross of the 100 crossing the 200, and it price dumped into it down into that 19.5K before it then took off again. So that's basically that's one that I like to use. You can use it on the daily, on the weekly as well. Although the 200 and the 100 on the weekly, they're quite a ways off. It's something that you probably see more towards maybe like a midpoint of a bear market, and at the start of a bull market. They're one of the first levels that start to get crossed. So we can see over here when we're breaking out of 30K, we're well above all those moving averages now. And then back in the bear market, about the midpoint, we started breaking below the 100. The 50 was acting as resistance as well. On the pump to 49K, I remember this period back to when it just got above the 50 MA on the weekly, and we are pumping to 49K. There was a lot of influences around at that time that were saying, right, we're going back up to 100K now. But then the weeks that followed were quite disastrous. Then only spent a short period of time below the 200 realistically before it then took off again. And we've got also EMAs, which are I've got it written. I think I've got a couple links in the Discord that go into explaining these in a bit more detail and a bit more technical. How the EMA is worked out. I don't really like using the EMA on these longer time frames. I prefer to just go with moving averages, but each their own. The only one I will use on these longer time frames is the 21 EMA, but I'll touch on that in a second. You can use these on like the 1 hour and 4 hours as well. EMAs on the 1 hour and 4 hour can show you some decent support and resistance areas, but it's a lot shorter time frame stuff, and they do tend to between 62.5 and what's that, probably around 61.5K, and then eventually gave up, and then it was acting as resistance before it broke up again. So it is constantly changing. And then you can use moving averages over these periods as well. Going to the 4 hour, the 100 moving average on the 4 hour is currently acting as resistance, but it looks like we're getting ready to pop through that now. I personally don't really use these levels for doing much trading on them. They're just sort of, I use them as a more of just like, I suppose, where there could be some resistance coming in or could be some support. You want to be above these levels, particularly on the daily and on the weekly. On the daily, we're below the 50 and 100, but we're above the 200. The 200 is quite important. So as long as we're above that, things are okay. And same on the weekly. We want to be above the levels, not below them. In a bear market, as long as you're below them, you're still in that bear. Now, I'll just jump into Bybit because I've got this one set up a bit better for the 21 EMA. All right, so I like to use the 21 EMA in, let me turn off this here, in conjunction with the Bollinger Bands. The reason being is the center of the Bollinger Band is the 20 MA. I don't know if any of you guys have watched Benjamin Cohen, but this is on the weekly chart. That would be his bull market support bands. That's the moving averages and the EMA that he uses for his bull market support band, which I actually quite agree with him and his application of the bull market support band. I just call it the 21 EMA and Bollinger Bands, but each their own. The 21 EMA is a fairly powerful moving average. You can use it on most time frames, probably all of them realistically, and it provides support and resistance. So at the moment, we're holding it as support. The 21 EMA is the blue line in the middle, by the way, that runs along the yellow line. You can see this is on the 1 hour chart. We're holding it as support in that sell off leading into the New York into SPX opening up earlier today or last night for me before it's taken off again. On the 4 hour, we're well above it. You can see it was acting as resistance most of the run down. Hour, moving to the 12 hour. Once we broke below it from making the high back here at 72K, that's it. It was all over. We were unable to get back above it. It was acting as resistance the entire run down until we pop back above it now. So the fact that we're holding it, it's actually bounced off it on this candle here. That is quite, it's definitely good news. So we could seize a bit more upside based on just using the 21 EMA. Even going back to the 15-minute chart, you can see it doesn't hold forever like that. It does break, and the lower time frame you get, the more often it does break. But you can see it acted as support before it eventually broke down into that sell-off last night or this morning for you guys. And then it's also regained it. It has broken back below here. So, maybe this 63.8 is going to be the high before it does start breaking down further. This is looking at smaller time frames. You can even go down to the 5-minute. You can see how it just respects it, uses it as bounce zones, and conversely also uses it as resistance. So for me, I love using the 21 EMA for day trading, or if I'm looking at getting into a spot position and I want to start, timing getting into a spot position. Not that for spot positions, I just look for the general price range. I don't get too finicky with, right, I want to get in on this dollar or cent sort of thing. But if you got a bit of time up your sleeve, you might try to time it a little bit. But yeah, it's probably one of my favorite. It's definitely my favorite moving average. The 21 EMA. Any questions? I feel like I've been rambling a lot today. And you can put these moving averages and EMAs and stuff into your trading view charts. I just find it easier to look at it on the exchanges. What are your favorite tools to combine with EMA for Confluence? All right, so it can be. It depends on the time frame. Like if I'm looking at a 5-minute or a 15-minute chart, I'll use a 21 EMA for scalping more or less. And I've started using the stochastic RSI, which it's an interesting tool. I probably need to do a bit more research on it to fully understand how it works. I understand how RSI works, but it's probably more about the stochastic. But there's something interesting with the 12-hour chart, and so at the moment it's right at the top. It's nearly at 100. When the blue line crosses the yellow line, and it's probably, I can't even zoom in on this so you can see it. But when that blue line crosses the yellow line on the 12-hour to the downside, and it's up in that close to 100 level, and you get a close on the 12-hour, it's likely that you're going to start seeing a flipper trend. And because it's on the 12-hour, you can then start scalping on those lower time frames. So, say 15-minute, 1-hour chart on the run down. So you'd be taking short positions, obviously. And inversely, when it's at the bottom and you see the blue line cross the yellow line to the upside, when it's say below 20, below 10 even, then you can start looking at scalping longs on some of these smaller time frames. So like right now on the 15-minute time frame, it looks like that there's maybe a bit more room for upside on the stochastic. On the 1 hour, the blue's pointing down, so the 1 hour wants to be selling off. The 4 hour looks like it's crossing back to the upside, but we have been spending quite a bit of time in the top half of the stochastic RSI, and we know that on the 12 hour we are also right up there. The daily still has a bit more legs to go, so we're sort of coming to the end of this pump. Is what I'm sensing. Not all the time frames are lining up, and you do get them all lining up together. So back when we're ranging over here on these candles, all of the time frames were pretty much lining up on the 12 hour, the 1 day, the 4 hour. And so the probability of going long was probably a smarter decision to be considering than there being more downside to come at that point in time. When you do start looking at dailies or even weekly, but I probably wouldn't be using it as a target, so to speak, which is probably what I'm more so use with fibs. Fibs, I'll have it as a target level, whereas I use the 21 EMA more as a guide. If I want to set a stop loss, I might set it below the 21 EMA. If we're sitting below it, maybe I'll set my entry for at the 21 EMA for a short position, because it's likely to act as resistance. Or if we're above it, I might set it as an entry position for a long. So I'll probably use it a lot differently to what I would use for fibs. I'll probably use it more so for like day trading as opposed to swing trades. So swing trades would be, let me jump into, we'll just pick ADA, something random. All right, so for me with ADA, I would have had this 618 as a target level when we were up here. I know it's broken below, but I would have had this as a target level, and the 21 EMA would have been following it pretty much. It wouldn't be down here. So, whilst we've had the pump, I'd have been setting this fib up, saying, all right, I'm going to wait here, have my long, and that's going to be a swing trade. But you can't plan that far ahead with a 21 EMA. It has broken down further, and because it did poke its head through quite severely on the first run, the next port of call would have been the 786 or this trend line from the low. So that's why you can't really use the 21 EMA with like fibs, for instance, which is probably my favorite tool to be using. And you need to use it with something that sort of moves at a similar pace, which would be the stochastic RSI. So, but if you're using it if you're purely just looking for investments from a long term strategy, I'd be using it on like the weekly. It's all good. Um, yeah, it's not the best position to necessarily be in, but it is what it is. We can go and have a look at sweat. And sweat is well and truly below. Like it's falling right down. We'll have a look at Ton. Ton's going to be right up there, so it's looking really strong. Kaz is looking pretty good too. It's above it. So, but yeah. All right, guys. I think that's probably enough from me today. If you guys have got any more questions about moving averages or EMAs, chuck them up in the chat, and I'm happy to either go through them in the chat in a bit more detail or a bit more structured to what your question is, or alternatively, I can cover it off next time that we catch up if you prefer me actually talking through it. But yeah, thanks for joining in. Hope you got something out of today and enjoy the rest of your evening. No worries, Baldrick. Take care of yourself, mate.